Hey guys, Mr. Nichols again. Nice to see you. Let me remember to look at the actual camera a bit. Lovely to see you all, and hopefully here we are back in the classroom. Let's put our minds into that mindset that you're doing a little mini lesson with me here and listening to the normal ramble that I go on about. Okay, everything I'm putting on this video you've just picked up on Show My Homework, which has got all the relevant resources. Okay, now I've got a few notes here just to remind myself to tell you about. First thing, a little news flash for you. You will be concerned and want to get on and know what is in your Year 12 virtual exams. Okay, so we've had a lot of conversation about this. We're going to set 2 exam papers, but just 1 hour for each exam paper. Okay, and we're going to be really fair to you. We're only going to do the exam in the topics that you've already completed. Okay, so in the first paper that you have, you'll be assessed on research methods and memory. Okay, 2 topics there: research methods and memory. In the second exam paper you have, okay, in the virtual exams, approaches and psychopathology. Okay, so the stuff that we're learning now, I'm about to teach you some more social influence, won't be in the exam. The stuff that Miss Richardson is teaching about attachment won't be in those exams. Okay, remember those virtual exams, take them seriously because it's all good learning and it's all information you're going to be assessed on somewhere later down on the line. Okay, don't worry however about UCAS grades and that sort of thing for the moment. That's a different issue. These are just us keeping going and testing our knowledge at this point in the course. Okay. Second little snippet of information, just passing on from Miss Richardson, okay, is that she has marked all your end of unit psychopathology tests that you did just before we went into lockdown, and she's going to email you individually to your school email your result for that. Okay, so if you've been worried about how did I get on in that test, Miss Richardson has marked those and will email. Okay, she's also going to put the model answers, the answers that she would go through with you in class, so you get a good idea of what good answers look like. She's going to put those on Show My Homework as well, so watch out for that. Okay, now I'm going to just do a quick bit of teaching here, moving on our concept of obedience in social influence. And I've got a couple of things for you here. Study by Hoeffling. Okay, Hoeffling did this study in a hospital, and you can really summarize this study down like I've done here, and I've got a couple of boxes that are going to come into play in a minute, remove themselves. What was the study? Well, it's a field experiment because it's done in a real life hospital, and it's examining how obedient will nurses be to the doctor's instruction. Okay, now interestingly, what Hoeffling did before this is he basically is testing, will nurses do things that they should not do because it goes against the rules and regulations of nursing. Okay, so they shouldn't do things like give too much medication, right, above the normal dosage. They shouldn't sign off medication, give medication without a doctor's signature. Okay, that would be very bad practice. However, the question is, if they get a phone call in the hospital asking them to do these things, okay, from an unknown doctor, but someone of a legitimate authority, will they do it? Okay, here's what Hoeffling found. Hope you can see this. But in a control group, so Hoeffling thought, I'll get a benchmark, something to measure against. I'm going to ask 22 nurses in a control group, would you do these things? Okay, so he asked them before, would you carry out the instructions to give too much medication and without the official signature from a doctor? Now, out of the 22, thankfully, we find out that only 1 would have done that. Good. These are good nurses. These are people who know their jobs and the rules and regulations. Okay? But hang on. Hold your horses, folks. Okay? This is what really happened. When Milgram set this up as a field experiment in a hospital, real nurses working, they get a phone call. Okay? How many out of a different 22, our experimental group, how many did carry out the instruction to give the medication and without the official doctor's signature. What do you reckon? Have a think. Okay, unbelievably, watch the box. 21 out of 22 would follow the instructions of an unknown doctor on a telephone call. Why? Well, when people of higher authority tell us to do something, we do it. Okay? So I want to jump out of this very quickly. Excuse me a minute. Let me just, whoops. Okay, so, hope you can still see me and hear me. I haven't gone away. So, okay, we've got our Milgram study. We've got Hoeffling's study. We've got, Hoeffling, apologies. I'm going to go back into this. Sorry, my fault, my mistake. Let's look at some other evidence, okay? Let's look at Bickman's study. Bickman's study is another field experiment, real life. What Bickman's interested in here, when people are walking about, doing their normal business in life, going around the streets and so on, okay? Would the presence of a uniform change people's levels of obedience? Okay, now we have lots of uniforms in life, don't we? So do people respond differently because the uniform tells us we have authority? Bickman asked, got his person dressed up in either a civilian's clothes, just like I'm wearing, or as a milkman. That's funny, isn't it? It's a uniform, but not one we particularly associate with high levels of authority, or as a security guard, okay? And he got the person dressed up to ask members of the public to do several tasks. Things like, will you move away from a bus stop? Will you pick up a bit of litter? Will you lend me a coin? Lend me some money, okay? Here's what he found. When the person was dressed in civilian clothes, what do you reckon? What percentage of obedience? Whoopsie, I've uncovered one by accident. 19%, okay? So 19% obedience. Dressed up as a milkman, interestingly, it's lower. 14% obedience, okay? Lower than just a civilian. And then our security guard. What do you think? Well, nice bit of maths here. Take the first 19% and double it. Double the level of obedience to 38%. What does this study tell us? It tells us that uniform is important, that people are more likely to obey when there's a uniform present saying that this person has authority. Remember, go back to what we said before, that authority has to fit the situation and the request. So, you know, let's take someone like a police officer. They have authority everywhere, okay? But a doctor has authority in a hospital, but maybe not in in a supermarket, in a park, okay? All right. Now, I've got a lovely little study. Not many people know of this study, but I really like it because you might think, yeah, all this obedience stuff is fine. Let me give you another idea. Here you go then. You're a junior pilot. You've got your pilot's license, you work for a domestic airline, okay, and you're in the plane and the flight is going on. And quite rightly, there's a more senior pilot, probably the captain we call it, don't we, who is flying the plane and making the key decisions. You're the junior pilot, okay, co-pilot. Now you're in that plane, there might be hundreds of passengers on board and your life is there as well. How obedient are you going to be to that actual captain, that senior person to you who's got more qualifications, more skills, more experience? Presumably you're not going to plummet to your death if that person is doing something wrong. Presumably you'll always be disobedient and question them and say, no, I think you're making a mistake. Okay, Tarnow found, absolutely blows my mind this, Tarnow found that by looking at all evidence from plane crashes, that what percentage do you think of plane crashes could have been avoided had that junior pilot or crew members criticised the pilot for coming in too fast or at the wrong angle or whatever it might be, okay? Look at this. They discovered that 80% of aeroplane crashes could have been avoided had that person questioned the authority figure. In other words, people are almost prepared to plummet to their own deaths or injury rather than be disobedient to the authority figure. Okay? Brilliant. Sorry, now I'm going to do my jumping over bit. Apologies. Okay, folks. So, I've already sent you this, but I will attach it again on Show My Homework on when you pick up this, okay? So now we're going to get into our explanations of obedience. All right, so we already know about legitimate authority. Give someone authority, okay? They're going to, others will respond to that, all right? Blind obedience to authority. This is a fascinating concept, isn't it? We just saw it with the Tarnow study. We see it with the Milgram study. People won't question authority sometimes. They'll just do it. They'll follow it regardless, okay? And we got examples from that research about that, okay? Already talked about things like proximity of the authority figure. In Milgram's study, he found that when the authority figure is in close proximity, called touch proximity, people were more likely to obey. If the authority figure wasn't in the room, less likely, okay? Nice little term here called being in an agentic state. Strange bit of language this. This suggests we're almost like the agent of the authority figure, okay? So for example, let's imagine this. Mr. Tucker knocks on this classroom door now and says, Mr. Nichols, I need you to stop what you're doing, okay? Will you go and do another job for me? What am I going to say? I'm going to say, yeah, of course. Class, I'll be back in a spell, okay? But I'm the agent of the authority figure. I'm in an agentic state, okay? How have I got there, by the way? Let's jump back up. What we call graduated commitment or foot in the door. This is the idea that all of us start being obedient. We learn to be obedient, and we're used to doing small requests, okay? Small things that are reasonable, okay? And once we're used to doing the small things, then as other requests and instructions are asked of us, then we will carry on that obedience. And of course, let's go back to Milgram's background. How is it that people could be ultimately obedient to Hitler's regime? Well, they'd started being obedient. They got used to that. In Milgram's study, people started with 15 volts. It's easy to shock someone with a tiny volt that you can't even feel, but are they prepared to go to 30 volts? And then 45, and then so on, all the way up to a potentially lethal 450, okay? So, you've got these explanations of obedience. Final couple here, buffers. A buffer is anything that stops us seeing the consequence of our obedience. In other words, if someone says to me, press this button here, and it will launch a missile that will harm people thousands of miles away, that's easy for me to do because I don't have to see the consequences. In Milgram's study, he put the teacher and the learner in a different room, didn't he? Okay? The teacher could do the shocking but didn't have to look at the person in the eyes, didn't have to see them experiencing pain. There was a buffer. Okay? And of course, a basic explanation of obedience is socialization. Most societies revolve around rules and laws, and we are socialized from a young age to obey. Okay, now I'm going to attach this document. You will see there's the Bickman study, so you can add that in. Don't worry about going on to this authoritarian personality type yet. Don't need to do that. Okay? Now, what I'm hoping to do is to then set you a little quiz, a little test of this stuff that you've been working on. All right? And this is the test. All right? You've seen a little bit of it today. So I'm going to ask you things like, can you complete those? Can you fill in those explanations of obedience without using your notes? Can you answer these questions about Milgram's study? I'm showing you the questions already, aren't I? Okay. Yeah. Can you answer the results about Milgram's variations? All right. What do you know? We've just seen the questions. What do you know about Hoeffling? What do you know about Bickman? What do you know about Tarnow? Okay. So we're going to have a bit of fun with that quiz. Okay, folks, look, that's almost 15 minutes. I'm going to wrap this up here. Keep working hard, guys. Everything that we do now is work. Loads and loads of resources going to go on Show My Homework with this for revision. Don't get overwhelmed or swamped by that. That's only us trying to be helpful. Lots of little questions, quizzes and things. But you work at it your own way, all right? How are you going to know the content for what's in those topics? If you've forgotten, of course, it's in your yellow sheets that are at the front of your files, okay? And if you've lost it, you've mislaid it, don't worry about going on the AQA website. Email us, okay, and we'll get you a copy electronically. All right? Okay, folks, keep in contact with us as always. Nice to have you here in front of me in the class. You know, great to see you all, and see you properly sometime, hopefully not too far away. Take care.